This is the Dane Moore NBA podcast brought to you by Prize Picks. Coming at you Tuesday morning. It's February 27th. We got Wolves beat writer Jace Frederick from the Pioneer Press here with us this morning. Wolves play the Spurs this evening. And, you know, in an effort to, if you're maybe listening to this after the Spurs game on Wednesday morning, I kind of want to just talk about what do we need to see from this Wolves team over the final 25 games of the regular season to really feel confident about a deep run into the playoffs. We know that's a possibility. We know that's a possibility. It isn't a deep run as well. I want to get Jace's thoughts on that. How are we doing, Jace?
I'm thrown off. I thought we were going to do a deep dive X and O's on a game against an 11-win team. So I'll throw my notes out the window and we'll do what you want instead.
Oh, we could do that. You could look up the Prize Picks how the Wolves might do against
there you go
the 11.
Get that ad read knocked out.
You know it. You
Early
know it.
When everybody's still tuned in.
Exactly. PrizePicks.com. Prize Picks app, promo code Dane for a $100 sign up bonus. I was looking this morning at some of the Wolves Spurs props for that game. Ant 2.5 turnovers. I think he might go more than 2.5 turnovers against Wembanyama there. Maybe Cat, big game. I don't know. Well, maybe we'll talk about the Spurs game a little bit later. But Jace, my thinking here to kind of assess the Wolves and I don't know, try to diagnose how far we think they can go. We probably got to look at them like internally, right? And externally, like in the context of the Western Conference. Internally, we're looking at the offense, which we've talked about a ton. That seems to be the one real needle mover, but I don't think we should brush over the defense. Like, I think the defense has been broadly a lot better, a lot more the teeth to it recently. That can be something that could push you through, could win you around potentially, or at least I want to talk about the idea of that happening. And then when we're talking about a deep run, we're talking about beating a Clippers team, a Nuggets team, or a Thunder team in the second round. Likely that's going to be required to get to the Western Conference Final. So we'll run through sort of all of that, but let's start with the offense. February up until the All-Star break, they played 7 games. They were 5-2, best point differential in the league. They blew a couple of games there. You could make the case up to the All-Star break that the Wolves were playing as well as anyone, and that was because the offense had finally sort of caught up to the defense. Number 1 defense in February up to the All-Star break, number 4 in offense. We've said that a few times. But these first 2 games out of the break, at least offensively, they haven't come back at that same level at all offensively. Where are you just at in this? I mean, we're just right now talking about the Bucks game and the Nets game, but broadly, where's your belief in this offense and what it can do and what it can be over these final 25 games?
I feel like it's going to be more like what we've seen the majority of the season than what we saw in that stretch before All-Star. You know, and I know like, and that's not like a death sentence for them. I really don't think so. You mentioned the defense, like it's so good, and we'll get to that, but it's so good that I think you can win with a very average offense. To what degree, we'll find out. It depends on exactly how dominant the defense can be, frankly. But offensively, I just think like there will be games, there will be times where they find things where they really play with the correct, you know, like ball movement, decision making, like quick. But I just think it's not in enough guys. Like it's not their status quo. It's not their MO to play that way, to move, just to move, to cut, to screen, to create for others. It's just not who they are right now. And you can like pound it into their head, and you can drill it into their head, and you can find it for a few games. But I do think that it'll kind of regress to the mean at certain points. And they're so skilled that they can still like score points and win games enough offensively. But I just don't think that they're to a point yet. I'd be surprised over this final third of the season into the playoffs, like when things get harder. When defenses lock in more, that all of a sudden now they will like really start humming offensively. Like I think like there were certainly some games in there, like even against like the Clippers, where the offense looked pretty good. But I do think in general, like a lot of the good nights, like the Portland games, like lighting up Portland, like that's just paths of least resistance, and then that's when you're more likely like this is easy. I can make the right plays. Like Ant oftentimes is just getting off the ball because he's like, whatever, I don't care about scoring against Portland. But now, like, if you face a really good defense and then, like, things get a little sticky because there's resistance, and then somebody tries to take over. I just think that's more who they are at their core right now. So I don't expect them to like hit some great new height offensively, but I think they can win a lot in spite of that.
Right. It's at practice yesterday. We asked Mike Conley about this, and it's kind of like the idea of whether or not this is a fatal flaw, in terms of your right into the playoffs or whatever. And I'll play this clip here in a second, but I thought it was interesting how we also compared it to the Utah team and sort of their fatal flaw that year when they lost to the Clippers. And it was, as Mike says here, it was the thing they were worried about going into the playoffs. Or that was their bugaboo during the season, was playing against the smaller ball, switching defenses. And they kind of knew that that's what they were going to have to solve when the playoffs came. They had some answers for it. They were injured a little bit, and obviously they ultimately lost to the Clippers there. But I think Mike gives really good perspective on the offense of like, that gives me a little bit confidence in the idea that like they know it, right? Thank God they know it at this point. Like they should. But
well, Mike knows it.
Mike knows it, but I do broadly think it's sinking it a little bit more down the pecking order, maybe the age curve of like, they've started to lose enough, I think, in some of these games where it's like, oh yeah, we do need to change this. And they're still not changing it every single night, but I do feel confident that it is being hammered home and it's in their minds. Is it at the forefront of their minds? So I'll play this mic clip and then we can talk about it a little bit more.
Is it bizarre to have 40 wins, be the number one seed in the West, and have this thing kind of offensively that's been a kind of persistent struggle the whole year?
Yeah, it is, but like I tell everybody, like all the teams that are up there in standings, number 1, 2, or 3, they're all dealing with something. We're all in it in this in particular bubble, but I'm sure Boston has their thing. I'm sure Milwaukee has their thing. Like, this is our thing. Our thing is trying to figure it out offensively. We've been on other teams where we've been elite offensively, and then defensively, there's this one thing that really bothers us, and we fall into it every so often. So, it's about trying to, how can we balance it? How can we, get our offense to a level where it's good enough, to compete late in the season and late in the playoffs. So, I think we still get better at it.
Have you, can you draw on a past experience on a different team where you sort of had that feel throughout the season? At end of the year, end of the regular season, you kind of found some answers for that made you ready to the playoffs?
Yeah. I thought in our Utah year, outside of our injuries, which what really kind of hurt us that year, we had figured some stuff out for the switching. Teams switched us and tried to play Rudy off the floor, or try to play super small ball. Or defensively, we had figured out a way to minimize the damage on that side and keep them in the game and keep our offense rolling. And we just I got hurt, Don was hurt. We had a bunch of guys kind of in and out going against the Clippers that year, and the Clippers are an elite team, so you can't have that happen. And so it's the same here. We're going to have to deal with what we're dealing with on our offensive end, and how guys have tried to evolve individually, and how their growth goes is how our offense will continue to go. So we just got to continue to do it together and keep holding each other accountable on that end.
So Mike is saying that we figured it out, like that Utah figured it out, and then they got hurt. Mike has said that before. Like, I just got hurt in that Clippers series, and I agree with him. That obviously hurts them. Never mentions that Kawhi didn't play in that series. Like, yeah, you didn't play, neither did Kawhi Leonard. But I understand.
I think about it from his perspective, and it's like, well, even just right now, like to be that vet and to understand, right? Obviously, Mike has a very high basketball Q&S and experience and all of this, and to kind of it must really grind his gears, day to day. Credit to him for kind of having a patience with that, but and I'm sure there's other experiences. If we kept talking to him longer, he could draw on something from Memphis, this time or that time, of knowing it's the issue that your team has and knowing it's the issue that you have to solve so as to make that run in the playoffs. I think if there's any sort of silver lining about this, is there's no ambiguity with this Wolves team about what it is at what they need to do. And at least they have some experiences, some games, and even against not Blazers teams, right? Like good teams, where they have done it, and they have, they have moved the ball, they have moved their bodies. There hasn't been, sort of that stagnation offensively or driving into a crowd. All the things we know that drives this team down. It's still 25 games, but I'm trying to figure out in my head how much better it needs to get, or how rarely these hiccups need to happen for me to still believe it when the playoffs comes,
And I think the problem with this specific issue is that, like, if you're not doing it now, I'm not sure how likely it is that you're going to do it in the playoffs when, like, teams are game planning significantly more. They're really locking in on certain matchups and whatnot to, like, take things away. And they're just defending a little bit harder. Like, everybody's defending a little bit harder. Even the Wolves will defend a little bit harder.
Sure.
So if you aren't creating free-flowing, quick decision offense in the regular season, even against some teams that just aren't that great, how likely are you to do it against better teams who maybe have better personnel, who are just really locked in on certain things and trying to take things away and put you in difficult situations? Like, that to me is like, I don't know. Like, if they face a team that switches, I have seen nothing to suggest that, that something will change and be positive. Maybe like the last 6 minutes of that Brooklyn game, like Finch said, he's like, Ant started to cut. That was good. Guys started to
body
cut.
movement.
Yes, we moved bodies, and then we got good shots. Weird. So maybe like stuff like that, maybe over a 7-game series, they would figure it out. But like, I think you have to see it really consistently to then have faith that when things get really tough and you face a lot of resistance in the playoffs, that you will continue to do it. The Bugaboo thing is interesting because, like, I think that was my biggest revelation 2 years ago when they lost to Memphis. I was like, oh yeah, they got knocked out by the two things that
were the Bugaboo all year. Yeah,
couldn't rebound and couldn't play late game offense. And to me, that's still where, like, this whole thing boils down to is, like, offensively, it's always kind of a problem, but it really does come down to, like, those last 6 minutes. I don't trust their offense in the last 6 minutes of games. And that's where I think it's going to matter most. Certainly, like, you can build out a bigger lead and whatnot if you just play good offense all game. But you're going to end up playing close games, and how do you execute late in those games? And that's where, like, offensively, because even when they were rolling, like you mentioned, that point differential is huge, and they blew a couple games in that stretch. Even when they're playing like their best basketball, like they dominated Orlando for 3 quarters. And then late game, they dominated Chicago for at least a half. And then just like, but late game situations, they kind of crumble. And that's still the thing where I'm like, I most need to see that, because even at their best, that has never really went away.
Yeah. And what sucks is it covers up the defense when it's elite. Like, that's what the Milwaukee game, like right out of the break, I thought, just like, going back and watching the first half of, like, the defensive clips from the Wolves, I'm like, that's tough. You know, that's the best defense. It just easily is. I was, no game last night, just watching some League Pass and stuff. And I'm like, I don't think I ever see anybody else in the NBA defend the way the Wolves defend when they're defending like that, and they have the highest ceiling of their defense. The problem is that offense can strip away the defense's floor, right? And again, that's what happened in the third quarter against Milwaukee. When you're turning it over, now they're getting runouts. You don't have, no team is like elite in getting back in transition and into the half court,
especially off turnovers. Right?
Exactly. You can't do that. It just doesn't. Best case scenario, it's going to be like a cross match. Somebody slowed someone down, and now it's like, okay, everyone just pick someone up. Well,
I'd say the Wolves are actually. I would actually say the Wolves are decent at, like, they turn it over and, like, Ant or somebody sprints back and makes it tough and maybe forces a miss. Yeah, Nas, whoever. Like, Wolves aren't bad at that, but it's a low percentage thing. Like, no matter what.
It's just, and I don't know. I don't really know what to, like, draw off of like how much can defense win you a game, or win you a series, if the offense isn't there too. And maybe it can. I'm saying I don't know. Like, I do feel like in any given playoff game, if they do have 6 or 8 minutes where the offense is like that, and it's leading into turnovers and leading into transition the other way, it's just that defense is such like a small margin sort of game that even if you have the biggest margin of any team, to sort of lose that, it ends up taking away the weapon of it. When the Wolves defense is weaponized and the offense is competent, like if I can know that going into any game, just that the offense is competent and the defense will have its effort there. I mean, I don't, maybe Denver and Boston, I'm not picking in that, but even then I maybe would pick the Wolves if I could know that. It's the ambiguity of knowing what the offense will do. But I do want to give the defense, we were talking about it a little bit before we started recording. Like, I think the defense is back to what it was at the beginning of the season. They had that post-Christmas lull on kind of both sides of the ball. But this, to me, Brooklyn game, there wasn't Rudy, but I still felt like there was some defensive effort. Yeah, like Brooklyn missed a ton of shots. I just can kind of feel like the ethos of that defense is kind of back to what it was. I don't know what that solves in terms of a deep playoff run, but I do think it's worth noting that this defense feels really potent again.
Yeah, 100%. Like it's making things difficult. It's at very, like when this defense is rolling, it's at very worst having you take shots you don't really want to take. Even if like they're decent looks, a lot of times it's like shots that you aren't like, that's not what we were trying to get. We'll take it, but that's not what we were trying to get. The Brooklyn game, yeah, like they missed a lot of, like Mikal Bridges went,
sure,
however many, and that was, and a lot, he'd probably take a lot of those looks. But even like against Milwaukee, like there are things that are hard. And Milwaukee made enough shots at the end, but Milwaukee's offense was not why it won that game. It was that stretch where Milwaukee's defense turned up and Minnesota's offense turned down, and the third quarter is what won Milwaukee that game. But otherwise, Minnesota made a lot of things really difficult. And you see that, and like you said, like literally, like if Minnesota's offense is not generating the other team's offense, then it's going to be really hard for the other team to score. And we see even like when Minnesota can have like Gobert on a non-shooter and like a Jay Crowder can't make them pay for that, which again is not what Milwaukee's trying to get to. They're not like, if we could just get this Jay Crowder corner three, we'll be all good. Maybe if it's Chris Middleton, that's different. But like if you can't make them pay, it becomes so hard to get anything. I mean, like, as if Rudy can just free roam, and Minnesota's other defenders are all pretty good. And then they really sink their teeth into it. You just see like each possession is a grind. And that is where like you're winning on the margins because you're making the other team like they might score a point per possession. And that's really tough. And like,
even when they have Giannis,
right.
Like, I mean, I'm sure listeners to this have watched like other Bucks games this season, but that's about as good of a job as when I've watched Bucks games of just, and you're not shutting off Giannis Antetokounmpo's water, right? Like he's still gonna, but the way that they're able to limit Giannis is real, and it's like
really limit Giannis and Dame together. I mean, they really did a pretty good job on both.
Particularly again in that first half there, and it's like that's the whole idea behind why we say quote unquote they match up well with Denver, right? There's enough belief in the idea that they can limit Jokic like 10%, right? That he just, given the way that they can match up with him and they can, like you said, have Rudy lurk and provide that help there, Jaden coming in to help that, where that's what you need. Like, if Jokic is going to be able to do his thing, you're going to lose, right? And with the Wolves or against the Wolves against the Nuggets or the Wolves against the Bucks, you have some confidence that like it's not going to be Giannis or Jokic's best night. And that in and of itself gives you a leg up that you can take advantage of if you can then, play offense at a average or slightly above average clip. I do think that matters, once the playoff series come, that we can kind of bank on whoever the star player it is that they're playing. He's not going to have their best series. And that in and of itself is some degree of a win.
Yeah, for sure. And that's where like, they can also like limit a Jokic or whatever without just giving up everything else. And like Denver's a great one because like it's not Jay Crowder, it's Aaron Gordon, and now Aaron Gordon's in the corner, and that's the last place where Aaron Gordon wants to be. Like Aaron Gordon is at his best when he is attacking the offensive glass, when he's posting up a guy who's smaller than him. So when it's Rudy Gobert, it's like, all right, you got to take that three, and that's him at the worst version of himself offensively.
Exactly.
And that's why just like matchup wise, Minnesota does fit pretty well there. Like they can at least, even if Denver is a better team, Minnesota can match up pretty well to make life really difficult and maybe pull out a series win. Like,
I want to talk about Denver a little bit more, talk about the Clippers and the Thunder too, as we're talking about a deep run, grab our first ad break here. Today's show is brought to you by Adriana Lonick and Coldwell Banker Realty, another new sponsor that we have, new local sponsor we have for the show. And when Adriana and I first met to discuss this partnership, it became making more and more sense to me. I was like, of course, like a lot of listeners are at least somewhat considering buying or selling a home. And we know that's like kind of like one of those things that you can drag your feet on a little bit. And you kind of need, you need to understand more what is all involved to be able to do it. And talking with Adriana, I feel like she can help out a first-time home buyer or somebody who's bought and sold many homes. We're also adding a perk. Mention this podcast when you contact Adriana at thedancingrealtor.com, and we'll give you a pair of Timberwolves tickets when you book just a consultation. Adriana is a Wolves fan and season ticket holder, and just reading through the reviews of her work, it's clear she's going to provide quality, trustworthy information that will help you decide what you specifically need in your home buying and selling experience. Adriana is going to make home buying or selling more accessible. But again, sometimes it's hard to know where even to begin, and it starts with a consultation. The reality of the situation is you just need to kind of understand what you need to know, and you can set up that consultation with Adriana at, again, it's thedancingrealtor.com. That's in the show notes here if you want to go to the website. Super accessible, easy to kind of start your process there, or you can call or text her at 715-304-9920. Again, that number is on the website. Her name is Adriana Lonick. She works with Coldwell Banker Realty. If you're considering next steps in home ownership and don't know where to begin, again, go to thedancingrealtor.com, get the ball rolling on home ownership, and score a pair of free Wolves tickets with Adriana.
Why don't you ever put out your number for people to call or text if they need something or like to consult? Adriana did it. Why don't you do it?
Yeah, just text me. In the fourth quarter.
Ideas for the pod?
Actually, I have Jace's number here in my phone. I could put that out there.
No, actually,
maybe in the playoffs we'll start a hotline.
There you go.
The Dane and Jace hotline.
Yeah,
it's coming to both of us. All right, we talked about the offense and defense a little bit. I think that the other part of this of like convincing ourselves that the Wolves can make a deep run is convincing ourselves that they can compete and exceed the other top teams in the conference. In the second round, they will likely draw a Clippers, Nuggets, or Thunder team. And I don't want to like rush ahead of the first round. You and I in particular have spent a lot of time talking about, a Pelicans matchup, a Kings. I've actually been watching a lot of the Kings recently. I'm going to do a pod on that before Friday is another one of those potential first round matchups. But I don't think that's what we're doing here. We're talking about the idea.
Seriously, anyway. So.
Yeah, I'm actually, whatever. I'm going to talk about that on Thursday.
You don't have to waste your time on it
with Brendan, but it's about the idea of once the talent, you're playing a team whose talent level matches yours, right? I'm not trying to short like the Kings. I think the Kings are solid, but they only have an advantage in that series based on like matchup and that sort of thing, right? When we're talking about the Clippers, Thunder, and Nuggets, we're talking about a team that's as good as the Wolves are, right? In terms of the talent that they have on their roster. I'm kind of like, I don't know. I've seen a lot of the Clippers recently over the last month, and a month ago I was probably like, that'd probably be my pick to come out of the West. They still obviously could. I just don't feel a confidence in that. The Thunder have been very impressive in their own right, but it doesn't feel to me like one team from that group is really standing out, which means you can make an argument that, it's the Wolves. The Nuggets, I think where I'm kind of at is like Nuggets would be the top one now, but would maybe argue Wolves too there. Where are you just, again, with 25 games to go, where are you just kind of thinking about the top of the West, or how are you thinking about the top of the Western Conference?
Yeah, I think I've got it as Nuggets, Wolves. I don't know.
It's hard, man. Right?
I don't know.
Kind of like switches.
I don't know who would win it. And like, I just then in my head I'm like, who would win a series between the Thunder and the Clippers? And I don't know.
Right.
I think the Clippers might be would win a series over the Thunder. I think that's where I would land on it. But that would be an incredible series. Like I remember watching games that they played last year. They were really great.
Yeah.
So toss up with those two. I would put the Clippers like just above them. Clippers are not playing well right now.
Right.
That's
the weird thing about all of this is it's like, what do I take? What do I take to be truth about these teams that I can think about playoff wise?
Yeah, like at their worst and whatnot. Like how do we evaluate in the regular season? I think the thing that makes it difficult to evaluate is like, I know that the Wolves are kind of playing at their top gear right now, and I think the Thunder played at their top gear for most of the season as well. I think that's great. I think that's a really good part of how you build as a team, and then you just see how that top gear, as you sustain it, like you get to sustain it to create it. I think, and like the Nuggets have done that in the past, and I'm not saying that like, they're not trying or anything like that, but I feel like the Nuggets probably have a different gear. I think maybe we've seen a little bit of that these last few games coming out of the All-Star break. I don't know if the Clippers I think had this imaginary top gear that we all picture and then never see. But like, so it's always just like, okay, I think this team is playing at their peak pretty much right now or close to it. Like obviously offensively can be a little better, but like I think the Wolves are who they are, the Thunder are who they are. Now, how does that stack up to everybody else? Like to like the Nuggets when you get to the playoffs? I don't know, you know? So that's what's difficult for me to gauge because like, I do think maybe Denver starts to turn it up now and look even better, but we've seen Minnesota play Denver once, so I
know that we do need more. We do need more Denver match. 3 more, right? Two more. No, I think it's 2 in Denver and 1 in Minnesota.
Yep. And then we'll get the Wolves are in back-to-backs and 2 of those second halves of it. So that'll be
Denver. Is Denver in a back-to-back? Do you know that by chance?
I don't know. I think I looked and I don't remember what the results were. But I think maybe both games in Denver are second half of back-to-back. So regardless, if the Wolves win, it'll be like. Got them. And if the Wolves lose, it'll be like second half of back-to-back in Denver. What are you gonna do?
It's with the different gear thing, right? And this, I guess we could pull in like Phoenix and Dallas, maybe, right?
Those are the teams I think that you're more so talking about because, like, I think we do know what Denver looks like.
I weirdly would put like the Clippers, Suns, and Mavs in that we anticipate them having a different gear. But not all 3 of them are going to hit another gear.
No.
You know what I'm saying?
Some of them are going to flame out and just feel like, why did we think they were going to be good?
But one of the 3 of them will. That does happen a lot. No, I think this is the right context to put it in. Not all of those teams are going to hit a different gear and we're going to be like, okay, this is the Suns team. We were all scared. Maybe. But if the Suns one happens, it's unlikely the Dallas one and the Clippers one also both happen there. But it's something to, be wary of. Right. If you catch the team that does end up doing that. And that's maybe part of the advantage of getting the 1 seed and locking in like a Warriors or Kings or Lakers or whatever in that matchup. Not that those will be simple, but I don't know. That's one thing about the different gear stuff is like we can't anticipate everyone's going to hit one. The team we should anticipate it most, which is I think you're saying too, Miami. The teams that went to the finals last year, though, for real, I think that's the the most likely. And then it's just weird to compare that against the Wolves and the Thunder, who have kind of stayed in gear the whole season. And I don't know. I think I would choose the team who had stayed in gear the whole season, but those are the less experienced, less mature teams. The Thunder. The Wolves do have some playoff experience, but as we were talking about,
the Thunder have none.
The Thunder have no playoff experience.
SGA has bubble experience. Like that's literally like, and that's not the same thing. It's not
right. And I put this out there before, and then people are like, "Well, what are you talking about?" Like the Wolves have this playoff experience, and even Ant does too. But it's I guess when I'm thinking about the Wolves, it's less so about the playoff experience and more so about my confidence in the maturity, right? Which again, I think ties back into these final 25 games. How many of these final 25 games am I going to go immature game from the Wolves?
Yep.
Again, a couple's fine. 5 or 6, probably not. Even if they won 4 or 5 of those, like it's this idea that I'm going to be more confident that they are a veteran team going into the playoffs. And I think just the best way for them to convince me of that is to just minimize the frequency of those, of those fumbles there. But overall, I mean, and this isn't even Wolves specific, like Thunder too. I think I'm gonna take the team that when I'm watching them night to night, I've seen that gear. I see that gear all the time from the Thunder. I see that gear all the time from the Wolves. It just becomes more believable than the theoretical gear that the Suns have,
Right.
And maybe it's different. Suns, Clippers, and Mavs, like lumping those all. Mavs have kind of showed that gear here more recently, but I don't know. I guess give me the bird in hand.
That's right. Correct. Because like what you see over the next 25 games can be like, wow, actually, Dallas has just played really well. I mean, they did against Indiana. So like, it's more of a reason of like, I don't know if they can defend, but if you see something over the next 25, it's like they've hit that gear and they sustained it. So now I think this is that team heading into the playoffs. It's a team you quote unquote don't want to play. But yeah, like if Phoenix continues to just like kind of play like win 3, lose 2 basketball, and
they need to have like that Clippers run. The run the Clippers had like a couple weeks after Harden. Like
I agree, but I don't think they hit that unless Beal's out there. I really don't think they. And so then it's like, well, at full strength, well, are we ever going to see that? Are we going to see it for more than like 2 games? Like
they're just going to come into the playoffs as a grenade, man. That's going to blow themselves up or blow up someone else.
Which has been the Clippers' role for like the last.
But I mean, they're kind of built
years.
in that image. They are like the Suns decided to do the Brooklyn Nets and LA Clippers thing, and they're the most recent like bite at that apple that
stars and scrubs.
hasn't worked, but I don't know, man. I picked Brooklyn to win the championship. That like
you would have been right. You would have been right.
I get enticed by it, but I don't know. Less so. I mean, less so for me with this Suns team than some of those other years. I don't know if that's because watching them or having learned a little bit. Yeah.
That's KD not being the same player. The Brooklyn year, I mean, I picked the Bucks that year and they won. I am fully admitting if Brooklyn stayed as healthy as they were to start the playoffs, you would have been right. They were going to wipe Milwaukee. They were wiping Milwaukee. And then one gets hurt. And then I think Kyrie missed the end of that series. Like
he sprained his ankle.
Yes. Too. Yep. And Harden played at like, will look like 60%. And they still almost won with KD because KD then was still like one of the top 2 players in the world, KD. And now he's
what was that? Was that 3 years ago? So he was like 33 rather than 36.
2021. Yep. So 3 years ago. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a difference with that. And that's why, like, I don't know. Obviously, one of those teams could beat the Wolves, but it just doesn't seem like it should at all be the expectation.
No, like 30% probability, like something like that.
Which actually that sounds, that sounds pretty good, right? And you've earned that, right? You've earned that if you're the Wolves by finding that gear. Particularly, I don't know, it gets to 30% if I have a little bit more confidence in the Wolves offense. That needs to happen for me to be like, okay, I'm really expecting you to beat whoever you get in the first round. And then if the offense shows me something, if I'm like, the post All-Star break Wolves are 8th in offense when this is done, then I'm gonna feel pretty confident of picking them over the Clippers or the Thunder. I don't know if anything can happen for me in the rest of the season outside of like somebody getting hurt for Denver that's gonna make me go into that series, even if the Wolves have home court, and be like, I feel like the betting favorite here is the Wolves. Maybe I get to like 50-50, but it's not, I'm not sure anything can happen just because and that's not a knock on the Wolves. It's a credit to the Nuggets and them having been there. They're the number 1 for me right now.
They're the defending champs. They're like fully healthy. It's and they played really well. Like, like they're right there with Minnesota in the standings. They've had like the same offensive and defensive ratings as they did a year ago. Like you definitely like, as much as it's like the Wolves have proven themselves over the course of this season, like Denver's proven themselves over the course of the last 2 years and have proven it in the playoffs. Like that's where you can say the Wolves haven't proven it in the playoffs. Denver obviously has. So it just makes sense to like, as much as in like the first round, we'd be like, well, Minnesota has proven themselves all year and the team they're playing has not. So we'll go with the Wolves as like our expectation. When you get in a playoff series, Denver has proven it in the playoffs. The Wolves haven't really had too much of an opportunity to with this group, but have not. So then you go with the team that has. Like That's just logical to me. And Denver, heading into any series, has the obvious massive advantage of having the best player on the floor.
Let's talk about the thing you tweeted out yesterday about it was Russillo talking on Bill Simmons's pod about Jokic, right? And the way in which he plays and kind of the high floor it provides. I listened to that pod too, and then when you tweeted that out, I was like, that is exactly what I was thinking of. It was what Russillo was talking about with Jokic and the way in which Jokic wants to play. I'm like, I have heard this whole thing from 55 Chris Finch, press conferences talking about the offense and what his vision is there. You tweeted out what stood out to you there.
I wish I could remember like word for word what it was.
Yeah, I should have found a way to like take that video and been able to play it. I think it's I don't know, whatever, the middle of that episode.
Yeah. It's like a 30 minutes in or something like that. But anyway, it was all about like how Jokic is constantly like cutting. He's screening. He's like 4th in the NBA in screen assists, which is wild for a player who is the primary playmaker on that offense. The primary scorer still, frankly. And like finding others, like he doesn't want the ball half the possessions. Like, and on the possessions where he doesn't want the ball, he's still like screening to get others open. I don't want it, but I want you to score here. It's not like I don't want it, I'm going to go stand in the corner. It's I don't want it, I'll screen, so one of you gets it. And it's like constantly, like everybody else has to be on their toes because they have to be ready for the ball. And that is just like what everybody should aspire to, because we see like what insane talent and touch and IQ mixing with playing the right way, you become the best player in basketball and you become the head of the best team in basketball.
Yeah.
That's where it's always like, and Finch is always like, we got to move. We got to like, and Mike Conley's like, we got to make sacrificial cuts for others. Like, you have to do that. Maybe you'll get it. Maybe the next, it frees things up for everybody else. Rudy's always doing that. We all need to do that. So the minds of this Wolves team are like, this is how we need to play. And so much of that, like the things Jokic is doing is not like a play call. It is just like, he's screening here. Okay, now I'm going to go screen there. Okay, that didn't work here. I'll flash here. I'll cut here, and then I'll go screen there, and I'll get the ball and I'll kick. Like it is like free flowing offense, but it's just thinking like, what can I do next to get myself or somebody else open? And it's doing that constantly. And it's like, I understand if you think, well, the Wolves personnel don't do that, so the coach should compensate for them not doing that. But I think the broader picture, the broader picture makes way more sense to be like, okay, but you can never stop pushing to have your best players gain that mindset, because that in the long term is how you will be the best team you can possibly be. You cannot give up on it and be like, no, they can't do it. Let's just call plays. You should consistently keep pushing for them to play basketball the best way.
Yeah, it's interesting of like the idea of what more could the coaches do for that. And I don't think it's nothing, but there's small adjustments. Obviously, maybe there could be more timeouts. Maybe there could be a little bit more play call here in this situation or that situation. But Conley was asked about that at practice. I clipped this one too, and he was just like, "It's literally just on us to do it." I'll play that clip here.
Yeah, they've been really detailed on what we need to do in order to accomplish things, and they might have, they've put it out on the table, and we all know what we need to do. It's about the players literally going out there and doing it. And I think the biggest thing over the last few weeks has been, us having more energy on that side, like just moving our bodies, being willing cutters, cat rolling more sometimes, popping more, like being able to read the situations and who's on the floor with you. And that kind of stuff really matters. Might seem small, but us all standing around the perimeter is not a good look for offense. So we got to keep our guys moving and trying to think about the next play.
It's just like
best subtle call out guy ever.
Yes, 100%. I mean, like he totally knows how to like. This isn't like a dig. Nobody's gonna clip this and be like, "Wow, calls out blank." But it's very obvious what he's talking about. And those are the same messages he delivers all the time to not just to us but to his teammates. It is like it's. And Russillo said it in his thing. He's like, you watch Denver play, and it's like, okay, yeah, that's really hard to guard. It's just like when the Warriors were at their best. It's like they're constantly moving. It is really hard to guard that.
Yep.
And it's so much easier. And I don't know why I always go back to this exact same Kobe Bryant clip, where he was talking with like Tracy McGrady, and Kobe was, I think, retired at this point, and talking about how easy it is in the playoffs to just defend pick and roll.
Yeah.
It's like everything is right in front of me. I know exactly what's happening. And it's easy for us to load up against that.
Yeah.
Especially like in the playoffs, when we know when we know your exact tendencies, everything. So much more difficult when things are constantly moving and there's, 4 actions within one play and you're never set, you're never stacked up. Like that's the best version of basketball. It's why nobody could stop Golden State. Even when it was just Steph and Clay and KD wasn't on the team, like they won 2 titles without KD. And when, and obviously Jokic last year, like nobody really knew how to stop that Denver offense because Jokic made it so there were like 6 different possibilities on every single play. It is so you can win games. You can maybe even win titles with like just really excellent one-on-one scoring. Like you can do that. There's not a world where there is a world where Ant could do that at some point in his career. It's way harder. And it's probably less sustainable. And if you want to be just like an elite team, like you will play basketball the right way where you are constantly moving, cutting, screening. Like Russillo was in that podcast. He's like, there are so many great players, but I'm like, yeah, but they're never going to set a screen for anybody. Like, how many screens have you ever seen Ant set for somebody?
Yeah. Right. No, totally. I mean, not many.
Right. And it's not like that has to be called. Like you can just go screen for somebody. You know, you don't have to be in the corner and be like, I'm just going to watch. I think this possession isn't for me. We see that all the time where it's like floating games, and the same thing for Cat. It's like, okay, so cut, like if you're just standing up there, you're not getting the ball, cut. And that'll either get you the ball or get somebody else the ball.
And it's why Finch has never turned this into a heavily pick and roll, particularly structured team, which your roster almost dares you to do, just like on paper, particularly with Conley and Gobert. The reason he hasn't done it is because of that Kobe thing. That's his belief. And now, people at home, you can disagree with that. I'm just saying, we know that that's what Finch's belief is there is a ceiling or diminishing returns to playing in that very direct style where the defense does know what you're doing. The idea that like, we just believe our offense can out execute your defense, even if you know what's coming. Finch aspires for something more offensively, and it hasn't hit. It hasn't clicked with this group, the past 2 seasons since Gobert had got there. But there's something interesting to me about still aiming for that, right? And it's aiming for the idea that is just the best level of basketball that you can play. And quite frankly, we're gonna find out if this team can do that or not. But Finch has always aimed for the ceiling offensively, and I think that's kind of why this team has not been a great offensive team, because when you aim high and you don't have the ability or the players to execute it, or that aren't executing it, it's not going to hit all the time. There's going to be those highs. Like we've seen this team offensively, when it's rolling, but in the aggregate, it's gonna balance out. It's an interesting commitment by Finch to the bit, that takes some patience.
I think like it's much as anything, it's like, okay, when you get like a coach and a structure in place, like, and if you just commit to the same things over and over again, and that becomes let's
all picture Utah in our head here, because this is exactly what we're describing. Utah, Quinn Snyder, Rudy,
it's a program, right? Like this is what we do, and we aim to do this, and this is what we want to be long term. This is what we want to be for the next 10 years. Is this kind of team, because we think that will lead to sustained success. Like this Wolves team can win even with bad offense, because it has probably one of the 3 best rosters in the NBA. Like 1 through 8, it is a really good roster, like deep, really good. They're not always going to have it. It's going to go up and down. Like you're going to be less talented some years because of salary cap constraints or whatever, guys going elsewhere to make more money, whatever the case may be. Like you're not always going to have this incredible roster. It's going to be Ant. You're going to be like, Ant could probably use a little bit more help here. But if you're playing the right way, like if Ant, who is growing up in this system of like, yeah, that's good, but we need you to do more of this, more of this, more of this. If he ever gets this down, if he ever, like, not saying he is Steph Curry, but he can be Steph Curry, but like if he understands basketball to that extent and understands offensive rhythm, flow, how even if everybody's keying entirely on you, if we play this way, we can get you good shots. Like they will be better long-term no matter what the roster looks like. They will have such a high floor if they just play basketball this way, because it's not so talent dependent like that isolation type basketball can be.
I wasn't at the game on Saturday night, and Jaden was a big part of the the story of that game. Chris and I talked a little bit about the effort stuff or whatever. We don't need to get into that again. I was thinking about going back and reading some of the quotes from that game, and Finch kind of publicly nudging Jaden to kind of like snap out of it or snap into what they need him to be. And the line he always uses, right, is Jaden's the barometer, right? The barometer for the offense. Jaden's having a good offensive game or involved in the offense. The numbers bear it out, right? It has been way better. I'm wondering what you think about that. Like, is that something that he can just force to happen? You know what I'm saying? Like, can he script it a little bit more, Finch, to involve Jaden, maybe even intentionally early, so as it at least begins as one of those games with the heavy involvement from Jaden? Or does it just need to kind of come within the flow? Does it need to come from random cuts? Like scripted offense for Jaden? Is there a way to force that ingredient in there a little bit more? Do you get what I'm getting at? So as to reach that ceiling or that high level of the barometer that Jaden provides.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying 100%. I don't think so. I really don't. I think that Jaden's best offense comes when he is catching the ball for a wide open corner 3 off ball movement, or when that same position presents itself and somebody's closing out hard and he attacks the closeout and gets to the rim. And that can even be like from like not even the corner, but the wing, and he's attacking a closeout. I think when we see like Jaden getting the ball in a play and he's kind of just attacking one-on-one a little bit, like it doesn't always go very well. Right. I still don't think his offensive game is quite there yet for that. Not to say that he'll never score in those situations, but I think the best basketball for Jaden is when it's coming off of ball movement, much like Nas, frankly. And I think that does have to kind of come a little bit more organically from everybody else moving the ball and making the right plays. Like I get what you're saying. I understand like the premise of it, but
the idea of it, I don't think it would work either. I don't think it's something you can completely. Okay, so I think about the first quarters where Jaden over the past 2 years has been awesome. It's when a team is trying to hide somebody on him.
Yeah.
Trae Young, or sometimes they'll do the thing that the Wolves often do with Rudy. They'll put a center on Jaden, kind of leave him open in the corner and do that. And sometimes because Jaden does have like an offensive game to like, if you don't guard him at all, he's going to be able to like get into that little 10-footer, or he can make corner threes at a high clip. I think that's probably the only times where that really comes is when the defense is ignoring him. If they're guarding him honestly, I'm not sure you can script something to get him going so as to, if you engage him offensively, then he's maybe more engaged on defense, whatever, the trickle down effect of all of that. It's always good news for the Wolves if Jaden McDaniels is involved in the offense. And they just need to find, then organically, if you can't script it, they need to find more organic ways to get that. That could be something that's unlocked in this offense, I guess, the final 25 games.
Yeah, and I honestly even think Mike Conley can be the same way. I wrote about that for today's paper. Like a number from that, like, because Mike, I talked to him a little bit after the Milwaukee game of like, got to ramp up your offense a little bit more, because like there'd probably be like a way where you might have to be like the third offensive option some games, like, and especially in the playoffs. And he's like, yeah, and I know, like, he's like, all year I've been doing a pretty good job of like, okay, like I'm kind of facilitating from the perimeter on offense, then I'm really focusing on defending and getting up and down the court. He's like, and now I need to add being more aggressive offensively into that mix, and I feel like my body's in a good position to do that. But the stat is just 3-point attempts. When I looked it up, like when Mike has 8 or more 3-point attempts this year, they're 6-1. When he has 3 or fewer, they are 8-6. And I just think like he needs to be, especially at the clip at which he's like shooting the ball this year, needs to be more aggressive about like, hey, Rudy came and set you a screen, one dribble. If it's there, pull it. Right. Like sometimes, like, especially as they get into the playoffs where offense will be harder. I mean, like, and it already looks like a struggle sometimes right now. But like, if you can get a great look generated that easily, sometimes you just got to pull it. Because if you're not keeping yourself in rhythm, now you're going to get out of rhythm.
Right. You're totally right. And it's like, again, in the playoff context, like the gap help on a top of the key drive is going to be there 90% of the time in the playoffs.
Right.
Whereas maybe in the regular seasons, there's 65%.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? Like there is the intention to the game plan is going to be way up, and they're going to start at the top of the tree. They're going to look at what are the best ways to limit Ant, what are the best ways to limit Cat. Like that intention is going to be there, which is going, whether it be Mike or Jaden, or maybe Mike, probably most Mike and Rudy 2-man game there. Like that needs to be, it's always the most encouraging to me when it's like, okay, here's a possession, or Cat or Ant went to the basket, drove into a crowd, turned it over, missed a shot, whatever. And the very next one, it's that get action with Conley and Gobert. And they just get it. They get into a quick, easy 2-man game. And you're like, okay, we're back, back stabilized. And that, and again, if in the playoffs, there's going to be more of those possessions for Cat and Ant, then there needs to be more of those possessions for Mike and Rudy. So Mike and Rudy. So I'm with that idea. And maybe Mike is the place to aim that a little bit more. And then if you do have Cat involved, and you do have Ant involved, and you have the 2-man game going, then Jaden's just going to trickle himself open.
Right.
And that's what's going to happen there. But it can't be. The worst quarters are when it's just one guy. If it's just any one guy, and even if it's Ant, like 7 for 8, 18 points in the first quarter, which is awesome, fun to watch.
Yes. Yeah.
What's like the game hit rate of that, and what opportunity cost was there to having done that in the first quarter? I think that's something they've gotten better at. There's way too much of that at the beginning of the season. Like some of these things have improved, but they really need to kind of like cement, it feels like, into their brains.
Because it's going to be like, there's going to be like the devil on your shoulder, like in the playoffs, with like all the lights are on you and it's the big moments of like, do it, just go, shoot it, like this is on you, this is your time. Like those are the things with like Ant and Cat where we've seen it in the past. And a lot of times it works out for Ant, but then it doesn't work out for others. And it's like, well, nobody else made shots. It's like, well, everybody else stood and watched for 10 minutes and then was asked to make a 3 in the 11th minute. But I agree with you. Like it's don't have those possessions like as much as possible. Like you're going to need Ant to step up at various points, but mix everybody in. I was going to say something else and I totally forgot it, but yeah, I agree.
No, it's about the mix offensively. I think that is the thing. It's like, to some extent, Ant is going to be the answer in the playoffs, but to some extent he's not. He's not. He's not going to. He cannot be the answer.
Ant 40 balls is not how you're going to win playoff series. And like Ant 40 ball, Ant 40 ball, Ant 40 ball. Like it's not the best version of this team. Frankly, that's my biggest point. But,
it's the mix. It's like the pockets of that. Maybe once you've already established something with Cat,
right?
Or and some of this is hard. It is like reading and it's doing it quickly and it's kind of like assessing in your brain of like, okay, where are we at as a team? Collectively, offensively here, what do we need from me? And that's hard. Well, particularly when Ant and Cat, they're trying to get theirs, they're trying to do their own thing. Like there's just these. That's what I think it is ultimately. When the things stop for a whole quarter, it's the thoughts get clouded. You don't have the clarity to be like, this is actually what we need to do. We need to get back to this. 4 or 5 minutes goes by. You have 6, 7 turnovers, and you're like, okay, there you go. 7-point lead is now a 12-point deficit. And it's just finding that clarity and having actions outside of Cat and Ant who need to carry you. They are the offensive ship, but they not every possession. It just is not every possession. And when they don't, and when they haven't done that, it's been the best that this team has played, all season. So
the thing I like this year, what I was going to say, and I forgot, is like, it seems like they're like their best formula, and I almost feel like other guys know it, is like, all right, let's do things the right way. And then once the game is won, like once we're up like 14 with like 3 minutes left, go ahead, Ant. Do all your isolation possessions where you just dribble 20 times and fire it up or whatever. And if it goes in, great, crowd's ecstatic. If it doesn't go in, we already won. And then he'll hit like 3 tough ones in a row, and it's like, great. Get it out of your system.
Get those points.
You earned, exactly. You earned this time. Go ahead, go nuts. It doesn't matter. You know,
and when he's hot too, particularly if he's hot, because like in the end of that Milwaukee game, incredible shot making.
Yep.
It was too little too late because they blew too much in the third quarter, but it was like Ant and Cat almost did bring them back.
Yep.
In the fourth quarter.
It's where like when they're up by 10, I don't think Elite is safe because they will still take those shots. And when they're down by 10, I don't feel like they're out of a game because they'll take those shots because they can make them. Like
for sure.
Those like their end of game, like with Cat and Ant just firing away, like it is a super high ceiling and a super low floor.
Right.
Like so like literally I don't feel like within that 20-point spread, I don't feel like the game is decided one way or the other. When there can be like 2:30 left, then I don't feel like the game is decided.
No, I'm with you. I'm with you. You want to let us know what Conley Corner was this week before we wrap it?
Yeah, it was just it was something like Mike did kind of last off season, and then they released it in the fall. Like it's his little mini video series, like 4 2-minute episodes of like Good Guys Finish First is kind of the brand they put on it, the name of the video series, and it's just Mike showing a little bit more of like his personality, who he is at home, who he is with his friends. They're funny, like they do go for like a little bit of like a satirical like sitcom kind of thing, but also like hammering into like who Mike is and delivering it in that kind of sitcom like way. I think they're all
like
funny.
The Office, didn't he? He said that in a quote.
Yes, he said he's like a little bit more like an office-y thing. Like you'll see him look over at the camera and stuff, and like they're fun. They're easy to watch. It's his Instagram, his Twitter. I just linked them all in the story online. Like so, and he wants to build out that brand, like another season of that show, which they're gonna do. But also like he pitched the idea of like maybe we do like a Good Guys Finish First series because like obviously it's titled that because Mike Conley is known as like one of the good guys in the NBA. Right. He kind of wants to go around the country, like maybe as the Wolves play other teams on the road, and like I know this guy kind of like represents those types of values. Like maybe I play him in something and we just chat about things, you know, just to highlight people like that. So I think it's a thing he was hesitant to do. He liked how it turns out, and now he's envisioning like where else can I take it? And that's kind of part of the big part of Conley Corner is just like even showing more of him. On top of like him explaining other things. And I think this was a pretty cool thing that I enjoyed. And I think everybody else would enjoy the clips too if you haven't seen them. You maybe very well already have if you follow them.
Yeah. I mean, but like I watched them like a year ago when it
October
came
when
out.
It came out.
When I was rereading it, I was like, that maybe it's just because I feel like I know Mike Conley a little bit better now. And I'm like, oh, okay. You know, but it is cool that Mike is in this late stage or whatever of his, I guess I didn't know that he was like significantly more private, like, not like nothing with his kids, you know, it was like, you know, Mike Conley, the basketball player. It's interesting that he's like wants more of that out there, and it's not like it does a good job of like taking a goody two shoes topic and making it funny, you know. This isn't just like, look at this guy, he's won,
best,
he's won the Sportsman Award 4 times, look at his trophy case. No, it's like it's actually talking about how he's not that, you know. He's just like super competitive. I thought it was an interesting one. Chase is doing these Conley Corners with Mike like every other week. But that one came out this weekend.
This last Sunday here.
Yeah. A couple days ago when I read it. Wanted to make sure to pump that there. That's about it. We got the Spurs game tonight. I do want to plug one more time that we have a pair of tickets to give away to the Grizzlies game, which is on Wednesday. Those, as always, are for Patreon subscribers. Just send us a message on there, entered into a drawing. People we'll draw somebody to get a pair of 2 free tickets to the game. These games are getting, as my friends are like texting me, these games are getting very expensive to go to.
Yes.
So, you know, hopefully we're really grateful for those of you who do support us on Patreon and kind of in a way make this all happen. This is a way through a sponsor that we can kind of get a couple people in the seats for games and do that. It's the Grizzlies on Wednesday, but it'll still be fun. It's a cool season to just for everyone. If you haven't got to Target Center, Target Center is nothing like it's ever been, you know, comparatively to our 7 years that we've been.
2 years ago was pretty electric.
Yeah, that's true. At the end. No, you're kind of right. It's like that. It's like
second half of the season. Yeah.
I mean, obviously,
t-shirt cannons flying into the crowd.
Yeah, over our head. Yeah. No, it is fun, and the Milwaukee game was like that, you know, when it was late, but it has been full, like, you know,
that's what like
against bad teams too.
People just like they want to see good. Like I think 2 years ago, even more so than this year, just shows like the fan base. Like this year, it's the best team in the West. Like you better be there. You know, like you're the best team in the Western Conference. Like 2 years ago was like they were the 7 seed, and it was packed the whole second half of the season. Like the last game of the regular season meant nothing. They played the Bulls with a bunch of backups, and it was loud, and people were into it.
Yeah,
like, that to me was like, this fan base is alive. You know, but they just want to see the team playing hard. You know, like, and last year there were stretches where I don't think they felt like they were seeing that, and that was fair.
Totally.
And this year, it's back to being a team that plays hard on a nightly basis. And as long as the Timberwolves play hard on a nightly basis, this fan base turns out in a huge way and supports.
Yeah. Yeah. It was, I think there's a lot of people, right, who, in previous years spent $50, $80, $100 a ticket to, to go to a game. And it was like one of those games where you're like, all right, Wolves are down by 24 in the second, and it's like, there's like that's real money, like there's that impact of like, not only did you give your night, I paid for this, and like, what am I, they don't care, it is that to that end, it's turned. And yeah, we're talking about these third quarters where they lose their head a little bit, but it's still normally in the context of an overall, like, the Milwaukee game wasn't a bad game to like.
Nope. 3 quarters of really hard played basketball. Yeah. And then and like you mentioned, like, it's not like they stop playing hard. A lot of times it's that they lose their minds, like
almost kind of interesting to watch too.
Right.
Yeah. So that's in the show notes in your podcast player on the YouTube channel here, Patreon, patreon.com/DaneMooreNBA. There's a direct messages thing in there. You send us a message. If you're not a subscriber, obviously for the playoff push, we appreciate that too, but no pressure on the $5 a month. Just for those of you who are supporting, this is a way for us to give back. Yeah. I miss anything, Jace?
Well, you missed my Spurs breakdown, but that's fine.
Let's go. What's going to happen tonight?
Wemby's fun to watch. The Spurs really suck. All right.
That's it.
That's the Cliff Notes. What I put together.
It will be. It is. You mentioned the switching thing against Brooklyn that gave them problems, but the Milwaukee drop and just putting Lopez at the rim and like daring people to.
Yeah, he dominated that game.
Yeah,
I saw it throughout. I was like, he is dominating this. It was like, because I think I've seen Rudy do it so much that when I saw somebody else do it, I was like, oh, yeah.
It's like, you and I had many years of like, why the hell is this team running drop coverage? It's a whole different animal when your drop coverage center is Rudy Gobert, Brook Lopez, or Victor Wembanyama. Like that is something, that I think is informative, even against a team that has a terrible record this season, of like how Ant in particular, how is Ant learning to better navigate elite rim protection? That is a weakness in his game overall.
I do think there's a pretty big thing of getting better at 10 feet, like 10, 12 feet, not forcing it, not driving right into the crowd, not just letting yourself be swallowed up by Lopez, who is like, if he's not blocking your shot, he is going straight up. Like he plays really sound, like rim protection defense, much like Rudy. You got to be able to hit the 12-footer. I mean, that's a pretty big part of it, because like if it's dropped, like the kick out's not always there. It is just you in this space where you're wide open and you have to be comfortable pulling up and shooting the ball or floating it or whatever.
Or not taking it. Like Mike talked about that after the Milwaukee game.
Yeah. Just like, dribble out, do something else. Like,
just because obviously like you want to take that floater when it's open to take it, or like even Ant, like if you can step in and
I just think
within a rhythm.
I would think he was taking 18 to 20 footers.
Yeah,
I think, and I don't think he's there right now as a player. I'm just saying, like when you can get to the point where you can like have a 10 to 12 foot game, like a SGA, a Trae Young, whatever, like that becomes a pretty big counter to that.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's what they're giving you, right. And again, we watched D'Angelo Russell on the Warriors give the Wolves 50 because that's what the Wolves gave. They're like, all day, you can take as many 16 footers as you want against us. And that's what particularly a bad team like the Spurs is like. They're not going to be able to run a real diversity of coverages, right? They're just going to be like, we're going to give you this and we're going to try and take away the rim with Victor. And it is to that, like, it's kind of like a zone, man. It is about movement, body and ball movement. So, to that end, another test. And the Spurs are a bad team, but they're not like decimated by injuries or faking injuries right now. I watched the game from a couple days ago against the Kings. I don't know if somebody got hurt in their most recent game or anything, but like they're still trying a little.
I think maybe Keldon Johnson got benched, and that is totally me off like seeing a Spurs reporter tweet it. I think Keldon Johnson got benched. Okay, he's not good. So
yeah, I watched the game against the Kings on Friday.
The Jazz game, I think on Sunday they benched Keldon Johnson,
or didn't like benched him
for a half.
Play?
Okay, I don't know, Dane. I saw a Twitter headline.
Yeah, okay. No, I didn't know if you meant like he was hurt or not.
No,
but...
no. It was a benching.
Okay.
Per the tweet.
Broadly, they're still playing, and they're still trying. They just don't have a lot of.
He only played 4 minutes in the game.
Okay,
and I don't think it's because he got hurt.
Interesting. Well, as always, it is fun to watch Victor play too. Like that even in the context of a bad Spurs team, I'm looking forward to seeing that at Target Center tonight. Jason,
he's a great. He's like a physical specimen where he's going to do something tonight where we're like, wow.
Well, and he's doing it more and more often.
Yep.
Like he's
just getting the NBA game now. Like what he needs to do and how he's going to be most successful.
And it's not like a fun to like, ooh, like, wow, that's like, he's good. Like, it's like, it's doing that stuff. And it's impactful. I mean, him and Rudy lead the league in neverminds from my eye test of there's a lot of that. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the Wolves go against Victor at the rim. And then also how they decide to go about guarding him, because he's kind of a different, and the Spurs beat him. Last time the Wolves played him too. So it's
I forgot about that. You're right.
Yeah, this isn't like this isn't just like a gimme. So we'll watch that tonight. Jason and I will be there. Britt and I will talk about it tomorrow morning, and we'll kind of continue our streak of back-to-backs and doubleheader games and keep going here. But Jace, I appreciate you doing it this morning.
Thanks, man. See you tonight.
All right, check out that Conley Corner thing from Jace. You're reading him at the Pioneer Press, following him on Twitter at Jace Frederick. I'm Dane at DaneMooreNBA. Until Wednesday morning with Britt, he's Jace. I'm Dane. Peace out.
How I'm feeling, man, I hope it never stop, yeah. Green and hot so you can find me in the crowd, yeah. Don't let standards ever